Countdown to world destruction, 1000 years. Please hurry up and find the heaven patching stone. Point 1, Kunlun Taking Sect, Jinling Cave House. Character Identity, Chu Chongtian. The mirror flower water moon template is covered, and it is traveling through time and space. He suddenly opened his eyes and realized that he was sitting on a stone bed in a cave, his body maintaining a meditating posture. Picking up the bronze mirror next to him, you can see that he is a handsome young man in the mirror. With sword eyebrows and star eyes, a face like jade, red lips and white teeth, he is gentle and elegant. Tisk, so handsome, how can I be so handsome? He put down the bronze mirror, pondered for a moment, and heard a cold female voice from outside, "Is senior brother here?" Junior sister came to ask for swordsmanship. Hearing this, he was stunned for a while, and then he sighed. Here we go again. Walking to the entrance of the cave, he reconfirmed his current identity. Well, the new disciples of the Kunlun school were taught by the headmaster and passed down personally, and Chu Chongtian. When Chu Chongtian left the cave, he saw a fairy in white standing outside. The facial features are exquisite and picturesque, and the temperament is refined and refined. He is dressed in a white plain Taoist robe, and a large piece of blue silk hangs down to the length of the back waist. The super popular heroine who is instantly recognizable by the audience. This fairy in white is his junior sister, Su Yinglian. He was born in a clan of immortals, from the Su family in Tianese, and possessed the rare talent for cultivating the Tao with 7 orifices and an exquisite heart. Therefore, last month, she was exempted from the examination by the Kunlun Taking Sect and was listed on the door wall. Well, if you don't have yourself, you will be the leader of this generation's disciples. Seeing Chu Chongtian coming out of the cave, Su Yinglian made a sword move and drew a red streamer from behind. The sword is about 3 feet 7 inches long, hovering in front of the chest. At the handle there is a relief of red feathers of the divine bird, which is lifelike. Su Yinglian stroked Fijian with her slender 5 fingers, with a serious tone and an extremely serious demeanor. She said slowly, "This sword is called Yujie, and it is my Su family's family heirloom. It is a tent hoarder fire-type flying sword. Master sealed the Posthath Dao for me, so that it can only exert the power of the Qi refining period, which is just right for you and me to compete with the sword." Her fingers slid across the blade, bringing out a splendid spark. Her eyes were full of fighting spirit, as if a flame was burning. Chu Chongtian is speechless. Just now, he said it was seeking swordsmanship, but now it has become an undisguised sword competition? Ugh! Junior sister is actually good at everything, but this one is not good, the temperament is too strong. If you beat her once in any way, she will have to challenge you thousands of times, and she has to win it back once. It's the 7th time I've come to challenge this week in the name of asking for lessons in swordsmanship. Chu Chongtian was a little distracted here. On the opposite side, Su Yinglian saw that his senior brother was absent-minded, and his beautiful face was stained with a little sullen, and he asked again, "Is it good for senior brother to give advice? Or is it inconvenient?" Autumn Chongtian. To be honest, I'm actually not someone who likes to pretend. If possible, I really want to deliberately lose to junior sister in this sword practice, so that she can rest in peace for a few days. But my personality doesn't allow it. I don't dare to give advice. Chu Chongtian said gently, "Just learn from each other with your junior sister." He also made a sword trick and pulled out the flying sword Jade Smoke. "I don't need to introduce my flying sword, right?" Chu Chongtian laughed again. These words were a little sarcastic, implying that junior sister had already lost to him many times, and she was too familiar with his flying sword. "Senior brother, please enlighten me," Su Yinglian said sternly with no expression on her face. The two of them held sword tricks again at the same time, so 2 streams of light shot up into the sky, one red and one jade, indicating that the sword fight was officially started. Su Yinglian continued to pinch and control Yu Jia to slash at Yu Yan. She knew that her brother's Jade Smoke was only 7th order, while her own Yu Jia was a 10th order flying sword. Although both of them were only in the Qi refinement period, the swordsmanship was sealed, but the 10th order flying sword was far superior to the 7th order flying sword in terms of hardness, sharpness, and speed. To win with Fijian's rank, this is the chance to win against the sword this time. However, Chu Changtian's side reacted faster, Yu Jia's side only moved slightly. Yu Yan had already fallen first, and slashed in the direction of Su Yinglian. Su Yinglian's eyes narrowed, and she quickly asked Yu Jia to turn around to defend, trying to lock Yu Yan's offensive. As a result, Yu Yan made 2 sudden stops and changed directions, and easily broke through Yu Jia's blockade, and then turned into a stream of jade-colored light. In an instant, it was approaching Su Yinglian's side, and the tip of the sword hovered in front of her chest. Between square inches, the outcome is decided. I lost. Su Yinglian lowered her head. Her face was full of unwillingness, so rich that it almost dripped with water. At the same time, the voice of Kunlun Mirror resounded in the sea of consciousness. With no enemies, the synchronization rate has increased, currently at 97%. Sister-in-law's swordsmanship has improved rapidly recently. Chu Changtian calmed down after being reminded by Kunlun Mirror, and said with a smile, "With time, my brother-in-law will no longer be your opponent." Really? Su Yinglian thought thoughtfully, I still want to compare swords with my senior brother, because it has benefited me a lot. In the future, I will ask more senior brothers for advice. Chu Changtian's face stiffened, and he changed his mind and said, "Cough, although junior sister has made rapid progress, she is too hasty to practice swordsmanship, and it is easy to encounter bottlenecks. Why don't you practice Dao Fa to change your mood? You come to me all day to compete with me. In order to maintain this no enemy setting, I can't refuse your challenge, so annoying. Then step up the practice, try to meet the bottleneck as soon as possible, and then break through it." Su Yinglian remained unmoved and insisted. "Senior sister, what do you want your senior brother to do?" Chu Changtian said helplessly, "Senior brother, I am not your full-time sparring partner. You come to me once a day, and senior brother has no time to practice on his own." "Senior brother?" Su Yinglian was silent for a moment, then said, "I want to win you." "That's easy, I can control." "Senior brother is not allowed to release water." Su Yinglian said angrily, "I will defeat you with my own strength." "How long do you have to practice?" Chu Changtian was also angry. As soon as the words came out, he regretted it. Because the meaning here is, no matter how many years you practice, you can't beat me. With Su Yinglian's strong temperament, how could she endure it? Sure enough, the face of the opposite junior sister immediately turned pale. Su Yinglian held back her tears, bit her lower lip, and gave a difficult salute. "These days, it's really bothering senior brother. When I come back next time, it will not be a swordsmanship practice, but a formal challenge." Before Chu Changtian could continue to speak, she took up her sword and flew away angrily. Kunlun Mirror said again, "With no enemies, the synchronization rate has increased, currently at 98%. Autumn Changtian. Junior sister, Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com is not a brother who has to pretend to be on your face. Just because of the Kunlun Mirror, I have to maintain this no enemy setting, otherwise I won't be able to continue my practice. Alas, after all that said, isn't it to save the world?" He turned his eyes to the northwest, and saw that the Kunlun mountains were endless, snow-capped like silver, majestic, giving a panoramic view. The sky is clear, and there are no clouds in thousands of miles, making people feel relaxed and happy. However, who would have known that in 1,000 years, the end of the law will usher in a shattering era? In the past, the place where Nuwa mended the sky was broken again. The sky tilts to the northwest, the galaxy hangs upside down, and the sun and the moon change orbits. The almost infinite amount of water in the Tianhe gushed out from the broken place, causing the fall of Shenzhou and the ocean everywhere. There are also stars falling from the sky in Kyushu, and infinite light and heat radiate crazily, burning mountains and melting, boiling seas and boiling. As a result, the fire will never go out, and the water will never stop, human beings will be extinct, and the world will be completely dead. As a mortal with a limited lifespan, it is natural to lie down completely. After I die, who cares about it so much? It's a pity that he was selected by a congenital treasure called the Kunlun mirror as soon as he traveled to this world. He asked him to find the spare sky-making stone left by the ancient Nuwa, and then restore the place where the sky was filled, so as to avoid the catastrophe of the Dharma apocalypse era. According to Kunlun Jing, the only remaining sky-making stone has now been divided into 6 parts and scattered everywhere. The reason why he used Kunlun mirrors, mirror flowers and water moon technique to disguise his appearance, act as a character, and use the alias Autumn Chongtian to join the school. It was because of one of the fragments of the heaven patching stone that it was within the Kunlun taking sect. Right above the Kunlun Tianzu, in the Yugzu Palace. The peak of the Kunlun Tianzu, the Yugzu Palace. Jing. Chu Chongtian called out in his heart, "Can you locate the location of the shards of the heaven patching stone?" "I can't locate it." Kunlun Jing replied, "It seems to be concealed by magic. It is recommended to investigate carefully." "How do you want me to investigate?" Chu Chongtian said speechlessly, "I'm in the lowest level of qi refining now. If anyone from this Jade Void Palace is pulled out, their realm is much higher than mine. It is recommended to continue to maintain the character design and improve the realm of cultivation. It's easy to say, I have no problem with acting. But do you have any quick success methods that can make me form a pill in one day and a baby in the next?" "No. Don't be so indifferent." Chu Chongtian continued with a smile, "The sooner my realm improves, the sooner I can help you gather all the heaven repairing stones, right?" Kunlun mirror. Seeing that the mirror didn't answer, Chu Chongtian didn't tease it anymore, he just figured it out secretly. The way of cultivating immortals in this world is very simple. Foundation establishment, Jindan, and Yuan Ying are the 3 major realms. Each big realm can be divided into 3 small realms. For example, foundation building, from low to high, can be divided into qi refining, marrow washing, and palace transformation. Now that he is still in the lowest level of qi refining, how much does he have to think about it before he takes the risk of exposing himself and proactively investigates the news of the heaven replenishing stone? Be patient and lurking first. Chu Chongtian pondered to himself, and saw his junior sister Su Yinglian walking past him, without even saying hello, and went straight to the teaching room of Headmaster Ziwei. This girl is still pranking with herself. In the sutra lecture room, Headmaster Ziwei sat upright on the 9-color lotus platform, closing his eyes and saying nothing. Below him, 14 futons were neatly arranged, in 2 columns and 7 rows. The disciples filed in and took their seats in order. On the left is Jindan Genren, and on the right is the foundation establishment cultivator. They are arranged from front to back according to their strength or potential. According to the rules of the taking sect of Kunlun, every half a jiazi, 30 years, only 1 batch of apprentices can be recruited. Chu Chongtian and Su Yinglian, because they were exempted from the entrance exam before the mountain was opened, and now they are only registered disciples, so there is no futon to sit in the lecture room for the time being, so they can only stand at the back. The 2 found a place to stand still, and before Chu Chongtian could talk, Su Yinglian turned her head away and did not show him a profile. "Oh, this arrogant junior sister." Chu Chongtian stood with bated breath and began to listen to Master Ziwei's lecture. A person who cultivates the Dao needs to breathe out and inhale to refine his qi in order to improve his cultivation realm. The result is all kinds of qi refining techniques. Among the 3 orthodox sects, the Kunlun taking sect is good at qi refining, so whether it is a high-level cultivator in the realm of Jindan and nascent soul, or the type and quantity of qi refining, they are far ahead of the other two sects. Among them, the most powerful qi refining technique in the world is the Nine Heavens Clearly Entering Mantra, which is known as the secret law of the immortal family. Whether or not the secret method of the immortal family is not mentioned for the time being, it is true that it is extremely obscure and difficult to understand. Therefore, everyone listened very carefully, for fear of missing any detail that the teacher and father said. After the sermon was over, everyone was still unsure, but Headmaster Ziwei had already fluttered the dust, so the disciples could only get up and leave one after another. Chu Chongtian, Su Yinglian stayed. Headmaster Ziwei said lightly. As soon as the voice came out, all the brothers and sisters before leaving couldn't help but cast a glance at the two of them. After the brothers and sisters had all left, Headmaster Ziwei pointed forward with the handle of the whisk and said, "Sit." Chu Chongtian and Su Yinglian picked a futon from left to right and sat down. Tianese Su's family, Geng Tai was sent this morning. Headmaster Ziwei closed his eyes and said leisurely, "I hope to be the master and let you two become Taoist companions." Su Yinglian. Autumn Chongtian. Both of them were speechless in shock. After a long while, Su Yinglian said, "Master, this disciple is unwilling to report to Master." Chu Chongtian said first, "The disciple is devoted to the Tao, and for the time being, he has no heart for the love of his sons and daughters. I want to come to Yinglian, and junior sister also thinks the same way." Su Yinglian was suddenly choked when he was stealing his speech. It's just that what senior brother said was really in her heart, so she nodded slightly and said nothing. The two disciples refused at the same time, and Headmaster Ziwei opened one eye, and his gaze swept across the faces of the two, then closed his eyes and said, "Su Yinglian, you are unstable. The crux is your senior brother. The so-called unwinding of the bell has to be a bell person. If you want to get through this calamity, you have to start with your senior brother." When Chu Chongtian heard the words, he immediately stopped talking. The so-called heart robbery means that there is a flaw in the heart of the Tao, and it is the great enemy of those who cultivate the Tao. If one is not good, you will lose your mind and go crazy. In light of this, the cultivation base of the whole body was destroyed in one go, and in the worst case, it was possessed by the outer demon head. Junior sister has a cultivating physique with 7 orifices and an exquisite heart, and she has a strong resistance to the invasion of the devil from the outside world. If she is so talented and still has an unstable mind, then the obsession that leads her to the devil must be so terrifying. Wait, obsession? He turned around and looked at him in amazement, only to see Su Yinglian just looking at him blankly. Could it be me? Report to Master." Su Yinglian retracted his gaze, lowered his head and said, "I only want to be better than my senior brother, how can I be considered unstable? To win." Headmaster Ziwei said calmly, "It's obsession. If you can't ask for it, what should you do?" "Master." Su Yinglian's voice trembled, "Do you also think that I will never be able to defeat senior brother?" Headmaster Ziwei ignored her and just asked Chu Chongtian, "Chongtian, your talent transparent Taoism is one of the best qualities for Taoism in the world. If in the future, I accept another disciple, and his talent is even higher than yours, what will you do?" "The disciple will report back to the master." Chu Chongtian replied respectfully, "How good is his aptitude, what does it have to do with me? He secretly slandered in his heart. Besides, what kind of cultivation talent is there that can surpass my transparent Taoism? The Tao's mind is clear, the effect is to speed up the cultivation speed, greatly increase the probability of enlightenment, and permanently immune to negative conditions such as illusion, mental block, and infatuation, so it is the world's first-class cultivation qualification. The only shortcoming is that his talent of transparent Taoism is not born, but obtained through the mirror flowers and moons of Kunlun mirror. In order to maintain the state of mirror flowers and moon, he must always act as an invincible genius, in order to be highly synchronized with Tao Xin Ming Ming and let it work. That's right. Headmaster Ziwei nodded in approval, turned to Su Yinglian and said, don't listen to other people's words while walking, you reading www.yuyuganshu.com only care about your own steps. What is your brother's cultivation realm? What does it matter to you? What can I do to beat him? What can I do if I can't beat him? When will you be able to let go of all these things, and your Dao heart will be considered completely stable? Master. Su Yinglian smiled miserably, senior brother can't care because there is no better cultivation talent than Taoism. No one can compete with him, so naturally he won't. If there is no one in front of him, who can he chase after? Disciple. She said with a choked voice. The disciple was born in the Su family in Tianese, and has been placed in high hopes by the family since he was a child. He has the rare talent of 7 orifices and exquisite hearts. There's nothing wrong with my brother's treatment of me, it's just. I have always lived in the shadow of my brother since I started. I opened up the Sea of Qi in 7 days, and it took my brother only half a day. I didn't listen to the scriptures, but my brother got the true meaning in a few words. Even if it is Kunlun swordsmanship, I painstakingly practiced for half a month, and I feel that I have achieved a little, but I can't stand my brother. 1.5 moves, she fell to the ground again, with tears streaming down her face, gritted her teeth and said, it's my obsession to defeat senior brother. It can't be destroyed, and it can't be put down. I'm sorry, Master. Chu Chongtian was stunned to hear it beside him, and a heavy sense of guilt arose in his heart, only to hear Kunlun Jing say again, with no enemies, the synchronization rate has increased, currently at 99%. Headmaster Ziwei opened his eyes and was indifferent. After a long while, he turned his eyes and raised his eyelids towards Chu Chongtian, which clearly meant, look at what you've done. Don't hurry up and take your silly junior sister away. Send Su Yinglian to the entrance of Jinling Cave Mansion. This foolish junior sister had red eyes and seemed to have not completely calmed down. It was just because he said offensive words in the lecture room, so he apologized to Chu Chongtian in a low voice and earnestly. Of course, Chu Chongtian will not be in my mind. To tell the truth, he had the task of conspiring to the heaven-mending stone, which was heavily in his heart, and he was simply too lazy to regard this junior sister as an opponent. His real enemy is the unknown person who lives in the Yugzu Palace and owns the fragments of the heaven-patching stone. To be able to get this innate spiritual treasure, the opponent is likely to be a big man at the level of an elder, and his status is even higher than that of Ziwei's headmaster. Whether it is persuasion, deception, or stealing, Chu Chongtian now has no confidence in obtaining the fragments of the heaven-repairing stone from the opponent. It is impossible to tell the truth. Whether the other party believes it or not will not be mentioned for the time being, just how he knows the catastrophe of the Dharma-ending era, there is no way to explain this. Not to mention the Kunlun mirror in his body, which is an innate treasure on the same level as the heaven-patching stone. Once it is leaked and let anyone know, it must be a disaster rather than a blessing for me. After sending his junior sister back, Chu Chongtian returned to the cave, meditated on the stone bed for a few hours, and followed the route of Ju Tian Qingwei entry mantra to circulate his infuriating energy for a few weeks, which made the sea of air so full. A trace. After finishing his practice today, Chu Chongtian called again in his heart, Jing. Jing. After a long time, a helpless voice came, what's the matter? It's time to go to Mount Shu. Chu Chongtian reminded. Kunlun Jing was silent for a moment and asked, what are you going to do about Su Yinglian? Naturally its refusal. Chu Chongtian said with a smile, women will only affect the speed of my cultivation. Kunlun mirror. What, isn't it? Su Yinglian's Yuan Yin is extremely pure by nature. If you can cultivate with him, Yin and Yang will be in harmony, which will be of great help to you. Kunlun Jing said truthfully. How can you still know the method of double cultivation? Chu Changtianhu asked, tell me, did you see something in her? Su Yinglian has the blood of a phoenix bird. Kun Lunjing explained, although it is thin, the rank is still there. Fenganiao bloodline, so what? Chu Changtian sneered in his heart, as expected, and continued to ask. Phoenix bird is the red species of the phoenix, the true spirit of the demon, and its blood is fiery. Kun Lunjing said calmly, if you cultivate with her, yin and yang are in harmony, and stimulate the true spirit in the depths of your blood, I will be able to make the phoenix bird's bloodline is a talent recorded in the mirror. Then what? Chu Changtian asked with a sigh, if you want to get the talent of phoenix bird bloodline, you have to play Su Yinglian's character, right? Yes. Kun Lunjing replied, her character is victory, you should know her very well. Chu Changtian was speechless, and after a while he said, send me to Shushan first. Okay. The Kunlun mirror began to operate, and Chu Changtian only felt that the light in the sea of consciousness was blazing, and the 3 souls and 7 souls seemed to be shaking. Countdown to world destruction, 1000 years. Please hurry up to find the heaven patching stone. Kunlun mirror mechanically said, Point 2, King Guo Peak from the Shangqing School in Shushan. Character identity, Ling Yunpo. The mirror flower water moon template is covered, traveling through time and space. Ling Yunpo suddenly opened his eyes. At this time, he was sitting on a soft bed meditating, surrounded by antique bedroom furnishings. On the wall by the bed, there is a bronze mirror hanging. Ling Yunpo took a look at the bronze mirror and saw a black-haired boy in the mirror, handsome and strong, with a determined expression. Although his appearance and facial features are quite similar to Chu Changtian, his temperament is completely different, and he feels a bit bitter and hated. Using personification to describe this temperament is like a dark boy whose brother killed the whole family and then absconded, so he was bent on finding his brother's revenge. Switching from Chu Changtian to Ling Yunpo, just activate the Kunlun mirror's mirror flowers and moon, and a permanent illusion can be generated, quietly affecting the 5 senses of everyone around. Whether it is sight, ear listening, nose smelling, hand touching, no matter who uses any means of perception to detect him, the image that can be perceived is no longer Chu Changtian, but the current Ling Yunpo. Of course, the premise of maintaining this image is to play the corresponding character. If the inner personality does not match the appearance, and the synchronization value is too low, people will notice that something is wrong, and the mirror will be in danger of being broken. As for time travel, it is the unique skill of Kunlun mirror. It can fix a space-time coordinate and shuttle itself to the time and place specified by the coordinate. For example, Chu Changtian spent a whole day in the taking sect of Kunlun. At night, he used the mirror flower and water moon to cover Ling Yunpo's skin, and then shuttled to the Shangqing faction in Shushan this morning. In this way, it is equivalent to saying that Chu Changtian and Ling Yunpo can appear in different places at the same time, and the alibi for these 2 identities is considered. As for why he did this, of course, it was because the second piece of the heaven repairing stone was hidden in this Shushan Shangqing faction. Xiaojing, can you detect the location of the second heaven patching stone? Ling Yunpo asked in a deep voice. The location has not changed. Kun Lunjing replied, 3,000 meters deep underground. Ling Yunpo. What the is 3,000 meters underground, do you want me to dig it down? But I also know that the person who can hide things 3,000 meters below the mountain must be a big man of the Shangqing faction in Shushan. Maybe he is also an elder. Still have to take a long-term view, and slowly figure it out. Junior brother, are you up? Senior sister's voice came from outside. Senior sister. Ling Yunpo quickly put on his clothes and got up. Pushing the door to go out, he saw senior sister standing pretty, looking over with a smile. Senior sister Anzisu is the only disciple of Sujian, the master of King Guo Peak in Shushan, and now she has reached the great perfection of Huafu rank, Reading www.yuyuganshu.com is close to the realm of forming a pill. It's just that Master Sujian couldn't go into seclusion, and Senior Sister An didn't have any guidance, so his cultivation was too slow to advance, and he had to shift his focus to business affairs. For example, accepting apprentices on behalf of teachers, cultivating apprentices, etc. Ling Yunpo looked around and saw that Senior Sister An had put on a goose yellow short shirt, a waxy white long skirt, and her hair was tied in a beautiful bun at the back of her head. Coupled with her pure and lovely appearance and her gentle sister-like temperament, no man can really refuse his charm. It's just that between her brows, there is a faintly strong evil spirit. That was the suffocating aura she had fought in countless life and death duels as a Shushan sword immortal, so Ling Yunpo didn't dare to underestimate her at all. Junior brother, you only entered our King Gluo Peak yesterday, so today I will tell you about cultivating immortals. An Ziso led him to Jing Si Hall and said with a smile. You have to start cultivating immortals from the body of a mortal. First, you have to know Gu, then refine your Qi, and finally master the method of luck. Those who practice Taoism are called breaking through 3 barriers. Because Master is in retreat, I will pass on your 3 volumes of scriptures on behalf of Master first. 9 Essence Huiyaya He Shen Shang Zhen Jade Sutra is used to initiate grains, Tai Shang Hun Yuan Zhen Lu is used to open up the Sea of Qi, Shangqing Secret Biography of Shushan Xingqi and Swordsmanship is used to learn the method of luck, and it also contains the general formula of our Shushan swordsmanship. What An Zisu said about breaking through the 3 levels, Ling Yunpo had already learned it thoroughly when he was Chu Chongtian. It's just that he is now playing Ling Yunpo, so he used Jinghua Shuyu to disguise himself as a mortal who had not entered the Qi refining period, and patiently listened to Senior Sister An's introduction to the scriptures and explained it in detail. About 10 days passed. On Kunlun's side, the matter of becoming a Taoist partner with Su Yinglian seems to have been settled. The junior sister herself did not express any objection, she just practiced the Kunlun swordsmanship at the entrance of the cave, day and night. You are trying to defeat your senior brother in swordsmanship. Of course, a Taoist companion or something is just an identity relationship after all. What really matters is that after becoming a Taoist partner, you can justifiably propose dual cultivation. This matter will not be mentioned for the time being, because it involves Su Yinglian's obsession and even inner demons, so we have to wait for the follow-up arrangements of Headmaster Ziwei. In the past few days, Chu Chongtian was just calmly running Zhou Tian's Qi refining, enjoying the hard-won precious time without the interruption of his junior sister. Every once in a while, he used the time and space of the Kunlun mirror to travel back to Shushan at the time of the last archive, and continued to patiently lurking as Ling Yunpo, pretending to refine. It's a pity that due to the lack of force for many days, the synchronization rate of Chu Changtian's no enemy setting has gradually dropped, and it has now dropped to 90% of the threshold, staying at the 87% water level. This morning, Ling Yunpo finally difficulty passed the 3 levels and reported the good news to Senior Sister An. That's great, junior brother. An Zisu said happily, as far as I know, the fastest way to break through the 3 levels in Shushan is about 7 days. If you can enter the Qi refining stage within 10 days, it proves that your cultivation aptitude is also first class. It's a pity that the master is not in retreat, otherwise he must also know the good news. Senior sister. Seeing that she was about to weep again, Ling Yunpo quickly changed the subject and asked curiously, someone in Shushan has opened up a sea of Qi in 7 days, more powerful than me? Who is it? It's me. An Zisu said embarrassedly, actually, it doesn't matter if it is 3 days faster or slower. We Shushan Jianxian are not demanding about the speed of Qi refining. The most important thing is the ability to master swordsmanship. So that's the case. Ling Yunpo pretended to be unwilling, it seems that I have broken 3 levels in 10 days, so I can't be considered an excellent qualification. No. Seeing his younger brother's disappointment, An Zisu hurriedly changed his tune, the time to break through the 3 tests can still reflect the quality of your aptitude. It's just that the difference between 7 days and 10 days is not that big. She hesitated, then suddenly changed the subject and said, "That's right. Now that you have mastered the sword fighting technique, senior sister will take you to the sword pond to get your sword." With that said, Anziso called out his flying sword with a smile, and flew directly into the sky with Ling Yunpo. "Senior sister, who is this Fijian?" Ling Yun asked curiously, pretending that he had never seen Fijian. "This is my natal sword, the tent hoarder water system, called Frostfall." Anziso explained. Ling Yun let out a sigh and asked again, "What is the 10th order? What is the water system? I'm about to make it clear with my junior and junior brothers." Anziso said with a smile. Fijian can be divided into 5 elements: gold, wood, water, fire, and earth according to the refining materials, environment, time, and even the difference between refining and sealing Taoism. Similarly, according to the difference in the refining materials and the skill of the swordsman, according to the heavenly stem swordsmanship, the grades from low to high are Gui, Ren, Xin, Geng, Ji, Wu, Ding, Si, B, A. But it is generally referred to by the tens of generations, that is, the 1st to 10th order. The 1st to 9th levels correspond to the 9 realms in Foundation Establishment, Gold Core, and Nascent Soul respectively. Fijian ranks higher than Sword Immortal, and can be solved by sealing. If the rank is lower than Sword Immortal, it is like a military commander. If the weapons are not enough, the Sword Immortal will not be able to exert his full strength. And the tent hoarder flying sword on the top floor is a flying sword that can even exert its power with immortals, so it has the nickname of Fairy Sword. "I see." Although Ling Yunpo already knew about it, he still asked with a smile, "I wonder if I can be lucky enough to receive a fairy sword to use." The flying swords in the sword pond, the tent hoarder immortal swords, are very rare. Anzisu hesitated for a moment, and then comforted him, "But junior brother, don't be too concerned. My Shushan sword fighting method, the most subtle thing is raising the sword with one's body. As long as the rank of the flying sword itself is not too bad, after you refine it as a sword of life, it can be refined as your cultivation level increases, and even has a certain chance to increase its rank." Ling Yunpo nodded, but thought in his heart, "Instead of getting a 9th tier 1 and then raising a sword to the 10th tier with my body, why not just go and get the 10th tier 1? What if you develop an 11th grade?" Of course, listening to senior sister's implication, the Fijian in the sword pond is not the one that you want to get. Maybe there is another test to pass. Anzisu steered the flying sword and took Ling Yunpo to the sky above Jianfeng. The sword pond is a pool of green water. It is said that every drop of water in the lake is actually transformed by a flying sword. Shushan Jianxian is brave and ruthless, and is addicted to swords like life, especially in the outside world. Every time he competes with other practitioners, after winning, he will often grab the flying sword and throw it into the pool after returning. Over time, such a sword pool was created. Countless flying swords are honing and fighting each other in it. From the outside, it looks like a pond of spring water rippling. The ripples are self-generated and automatic without wind. As for the disciples of Shushan who lack swords, they only need to stand near the sword pool and run the Shushan sword fighting technique, and then they will be able to summon flying swords who are willing to call. As for whether Fijian is good or bad, it cannot be forced. Taking Ling Yunpo to press down the sword light and set foot on the ground, Anzisu explained the history to the younger brother and explained the origin of this sword pool. Ling Yunpo was amazed when he heard it, and he patted his hands in amazement. As soon as the two stepped forward, a Shushan disciple guarding Jianka came over to verify their identities. "Wait a minute, you are..." After the female disciple saw Anzisu's appearance, she immediately lost her voice. "You are Sword Fairy Mower." Before he finished speaking, the male disciple next to her dragged her behind him, gave her a stern look to show her silence, and then turned around and said bravely, "Senior Sister An, are you coming to get the sword? Come to Jianqi, what else can you do if you don't take a sword? Anzisu said with a soft smile, could it be that he is looking for you to compare swords? The male disciple was immediately terrified when he heard this, and said in a hurry, I made a mistake in my sword practice the day before yesterday and injured my muscles, but I can't compete with swords. Senior Sisterin is looking for me, and that name was not created by my peak, but passed down from other peaks. Lord, Senior Sisterin, please don't admit your mistake. Look at what this junior brother said. Anziso laughed dumbly, you are a disciple of the Zisui level, but I am a Huafo level, and your cultivation is higher than your realm. Where can I find you to compete with swords? Isn't it great? Bullying and violating the rules. Yes, but Senior Sisterin wants to take a sword? This way, please. The male disciple bowed quickly and let him go. Anziso walked forward calmly, Ling Yunpo followed behind her, only to see that the male disciple kept wiping away his sweat, and the female disciple hid behind him, looking suspicious and fearful. After leaving these two behind, Ling Yunpo took a few steps forward and said with a smile, Senior Sister's reputation, I have seen it. Where is the fame? Anziso gave him a white look and said helplessly, it's just that when the master retreated in a hurry back then, the peaks of Shushan targeted me at King Gluo Peak, and every 3 or 5 weeks, they sent disciples to my peak to provoke me. Ask for a sword. The more you compare, the more you know each other, and it's not really famous. I see, this is the so-called no fight, no acquaintance. Ling Yunpo nodded, it's just that the senior sister just said the grass-mowing sword fairy, I don't know who it is referring to. Anziso was very embarrassed to hear this, and after a long while he said in a muffled voice, who came up with this lousy nickname? After the master retreated, there were too many people who came to ask for swordsmanship lessons, and it was unbearable. In order to stand up for prestige, I had to be ruthless, and shot harder. Why did it become mowing? Ling Yunpazuo suddenly realized, and said with a sneer, I understand. I think those swordsmen were unwilling to lose, so they spread rumors and slandered Senior Sister. Just hearing the name Cow Grass Sword Immortal, I would have thought that Senior Sister had murdered like numbness. This rumor maker ruined Senior Sister's reputation, it's really hateful. Where is the murder? Anziso gritted his silver teeth and said angrily, when did I kill indiscriminately? If the person who comes to the door to compare swords is polite, I will stop there. If you speak madly, or show malice, I will usually cut off their swords and weapons, let them damage their cultivation base, and learn a lesson. Occasionally, I can't hold back my hands, and I cut people through their chests and their stomachs. I tried my best to rescue them afterwards. Senior Sister, this is the right thing to do. Ling Yunpo nodded and said, those who come to the door maliciously and provocatively deserve to die. So how many died? Probably, out of 20 times, I'll miss once or twice. Anziso felt guilty. Ling Yunpo? The two chatted and laughed, and soon arrived at the sword pool. Baitan is thousands of feet deep, and the bottom is almost invisible. There is a huge boulder standing beside the pool, on which is written like a knife and an axe, with 4 lines of characters written on it, Su Ming, why don't you ring? True ignorance, how dim. Although there are only 16 characters, the writer's anger, unwillingness and despair are all over the place, which makes Ling Yunpo a little surprised. Senior Sister, who wrote this? I don't know. Anzisu shook his head, according to the master, when his master's master entered the school back then, words were engraved on this sword tablet. She looked up at the sword tablet and said slowly, Summing is the sword of Summing of the Taiyan, Zhenmei is the sword of the true mystery of the Sunday. Fuxi, the ancestor of mankind in the past, took the innate yin and yang Tu Chi left after Pangu opened the world, and forged 2 supreme swords, Summing and Zhenmei, to suppress the demon clan and protect the human clan. To this day, the whereabouts of the two supreme immortal swords are unknown. Therefore, the mainstream opinion in Shushan is that the 4 sentences on the sword tablet are the regrets expressed by the ancestors that they could not find the human race immortal sword. So that's the case. Ling Yunpo said with a smile, but I don't know what rank the 2 supreme swords should be. You said it was the supreme immortal sword, where did you get the rank? Anziso covered his mouth and smiled. It's like those immortal swords left over from ancient times, the Tei Sublight sword, the 4 swords of slaughter and slaughter, they are all of no rank. Rank, but not because of their immortal sword names. Let's not talk too much, junior brother. You go to Jianqi, and Linton will run the sword fighting technique, and Fijian will be summoned. If you are not satisfied, you can put it back into the lake and choose it again and again. Is it still possible to re-elect? Ling Yunpo said in surprise, then if I don't throw it back into the lake, but instead summon Fijian repeatedly to drain the pool of water, wouldn't I be able to sell it? That's why, Jianqi is guarded. Anziso said with a smile. Ling Yunpo smiled embarrassedly, and no longer teased with senior sister, but just held his breath and stared at Jianqi. In Jinghua Shuiyu, the character design corresponding to the template Ling Yunpo is called unyielding. It's just that he hasn't figured out how to synchronize with unyielding. Are you going to let senior sister beat me up? Then I shouted again, 30 years in Hexi, 30 years in Hedong, don't bully young poor. Senior sister. Ling Yunpo said in a deep voice after thinking for a moment by Jianqi. Hey! Anziso asked in a crisp voice. Have you ever thought about what we should do if Master keeps retreating and the situation of King Gluo Peak is getting worse with each passing day? Anziso was silent after hearing the words, and after a long time he said quietly, I do not know. But junior brother, you don't have to worry too much. As long as senior sister is still here, you won't be wronged. Thank you, senior sister. Ling Yunpo said with a smile, then I will also say something here. As long as I, Ling Yunpo, are here, I will definitely not let senior sister be wronged. In the sea of knowledge, Kunlun Jing suddenly said, unyielding is set, the synchronization rate has increased, and it is currently 78%. Ling Yunpo. It's really like this. He was sweating coldly in his heart, and couldn't help but murmured. Wait, this is a good thing. How familiar am I with this tune? Open your mouth. Senior sister. Ling Yunpo said in pain. What's wrong? Although I only have the period of qi refining now. Ling Yun said loudly, but 30 years in Hexi, 30 years in Hedong, don't bully young poor. Then what? Anziso blinked. Then, one day, with the sword in hand, my fate is up to me. Very energetic. Anzisu nodded and said with a smile, go get the sword. Ling Yunpo? Jing. He whispered in his heart, why didn't you add a synchronization value to me? After a long while, Kunlun Mirror slowly said, do you feel embarrassed when you say these lines? It's embarrassing, I'm getting goosebumps. Ling Yun said, so why don't you add the synchronization value? Although Jinghua Shuiyu is illusory, at least it can be faked so that it can reflect on itself. Kunlun Jing said helplessly, you don't even believe the lines you say, even Jinghua Shuiyu is powerless. I understand, it's mainly because the situation is wrong. Ling Yunpo thought thoughtfully, if there is a villain, humiliate me severely. With the inner taste, I can say these lines again. Indeed. Kunlun Jing agreed, however, you still have to pay attention to safety. After you finish speaking, don't kill the villain directly. Ling Yunpo looked inward again, looking at the unyielding template in the Kunlun mirror. This character template has an embedded talent called Natural Sword Bone. Although the name seems a bit ugly, the effect is unexpectedly powerful. Natural Sword Bone, the bones of the whole body are like the sword's edge, the efficiency of raising the sword with the body is improved, the resistance to sword energy and sword intent is improved, and it can resonate with the flying sword. In special cases, it is regarded as a flying sword. Except for the last point that seems to be problematic, the other 3 points are well understood. The first is to increase the effect of nourishing the flying sword, the second is to improve the defense against the flying sword, and the third is to increase the ability to manipulate the flying sword. The affinity with Shushan Jianxian can be said to be very high. Now the synchronization rate of Ling Yun's broken template is 78%, which means that this talent can exert a maximum effect of 78%. It's barely usable. Ling Yunpo stared at Jiantan and took a deep breath. Then he concentrated and stretched out his hand towards Jiantan, trying to use the natural talent of the sword bone. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com resonated with Jiantan, come on the sword. And Zisu watched from behind, feeling that his junior brother was really cute. However, before she could react, Jiantan suddenly boiled. A large amount of pool water rolled and spewed around, forming a turbulent huge vortex. A drop of water splashed out from the pool, and in the air it turned into a black flying sword, about 3 feet 6 inches long, with a blue lotus carving on the hilt, which made one feel dizzy when looking at it. The black flying sword fell into Ling Yunpo's hand, and when he looked at the sword pool, he saw a calm and sparkling sea. Where is the shadow of the stormy waves just now? Just now, did you see it? Zisu asked in surprise. What did you see? Ling Yunpo showed an inexplicable expression. Nothing. Zisu shook his head and looked at the flying sword in his hand. What kind of flying sword is this? Ling Yunpo asked curiously. I don't know, I'll go back and look through the classics. Zisu checked the flying sword over and over, and said uncertainly. Could it be that there is no rank? Ling Yunpo was secretly surprised, and asked Kunlun Jing quietly, Jing, tell me, what kind of sword is this? Kunlun mirror. Ask her yourself, she said suddenly. Then, no matter how Ling Yunpo asked, the mirror stopped making a sound. Zisu took him away here. After a while, the male and female disciples who were originally guarding the Jianke hurried to the side of the Jianke. Did you startle just now? The male disciple asked in a voiceless voice. Wanjian guards, the surging vortex is indeed shocking. The female disciple screamed, there is a tent hoarder fairy sword born. Hurry up and inform the elders in the peak. Shushan Mountain, Ziun Peak, Shangxia View. Tent tier flying sword. The master of Ziun Peak, Master Minghua frowned and pondered. He is a high-ranking elder of Shushan in the Yuan Ying period. He looks like a middle-aged man in his 40s. He is dignified and dignified. That flying sword is 3 feet and 6 inches, it is completely black, and there seems to be a black lotus flower on the side of the sword. The male disciple described, it's just because the grass-cutting sword fairy is there, we dare not look closely. Only after they leave, immediately come to report to master. The whole body is pure black, with a blue lotus flower. Spiritual Master Minghua pondered, could it be the Qingping sword? No, the Qingping sword was smashed to pieces by the 7 treasures wonderful tree in the ancient battle of interpretation, and its spirituality is completely gone. Maybe it's a recast flying sword imitating it, or another flying sword with a similar appearance. It can only cause the phenomenon of shock and make the group of swords circle and defend, it must be a tent hoarder fairy sword. If Su Jian, the real person of the 7 killings, is still here, I would not be able to provoke the slightest bit. But Su Jian has been in seclusion for a long time, and it is expected to be more evil. Prepared by my brother-in-law. But that Ling Yunpo was in the period of qi refining. Before entering the marrow, you can't hide the sword with your body, and naturally it is impossible to immediately refine that fairy sword as a sword of life. Thinking of this, Master Minghua thought about it and looked up at the disciples again. Seeing Master look up at everyone, the disciples in the hall were all excited. Is this about taking a sword? That is a tent hoarder fairy sword. Now that the method of casting has been lost, the only way to find the tent hoarder fairy sword in ancient times. Regardless of whether it is foundation establishment, golden core or nascent soul, even if he becomes an immortal, he can still fully exert its power as a tent hoarder immortal sword. Lu Zhe's hung. Master Minghua suddenly said. Among the disciples, a short and fat young man who was new to entry quickly came out, his face was full of ecstasy. The disciple is here. Master, I saw you just now, do you have anything to say? Master Minghua said leisurely. Lu Zhichun's mind turned sharply, and immediately said, 7 killing real people retreat, and there are only 2 people in King Gluo Peak. How can they be worthy of owning a tent hoarder fairy sword? Treasures have been inhabited by the virtuous since ancient times. Ridiculous. The real Minghua said lightly, being under the gate of the various peaks of Mount Shu, how can you conspire for others to wear swords? Think again. Lu Zhi's hung was sweating profusely, and after a while he said, Tuer. Tuer wants to compare swords with King Glaveng. Yes, it's to ask for swordsmanship. Who do you ask for advice? Master Minghua raised his eyes, and Zisu. Since, of course it is with that Ling Yunpo. Lu Zhi's hung heard the words for sure, and he was immediately inspired. He said, the disciple is in the qi refining period, and Ling Yunpo is also in the qi refining period, which is in line with Shushan's sword fighting rules. The disciple took the initiative to initiate a sword comparison, and if Ling Yunpo did not accept it, he would have to pay the spirit stone according to the rules. If for some reason, King Gluo Peak cannot afford the spirit stone, then use the immortal sword to reach it. Wei Zhunfeng is willing to make an offer to buy it, more refunds and less compensation. Then what if Ling Yunpo agreed to compete with swords? Master Minghua continued to ask. I also ask Master to take action. Lu Zhi's hung said with a smirk, after the application for the competition is approved, I will ask Master to give me a medicinal pill to help me climb the ladder and enter the marrow washing step. By washing the marrow and refining the qi, Ling Yunpo is definitely not an opponent. There are only 2 people in King Gluo Peak, how could An Ziso let her only junior brother die? She must give the fairy sword to her hands. The expressions of the surrounding disciples became complicated. On the one hand, I think this plan is feasible, because Shushan encourages the swordsmen to compete with each other and challenge each other. Lu Zhichun's idea is completely compliant. On the other hand, I also felt that this guy slapped his head to come up with such a poisonous plan to bully the weak, which is too sinister. Designing King Gluo Peak so that it lacks spiritual stones, and then deliberately proposes a fight, it is to bully the weak. Obviously it is possible to compare swords fairly, but it is for the sake of relying on the master to help Jiangsheng wash the marrow. This junior brother's mind is so vicious, everyone must be careful in the future. Lu Zhi's hung, who was completely unaware of being feared by his brothers and sisters, continued to bow down and said, this matter still needs to be designed, a good life plan, please allow me to preside over it completely. When I get the fairy sword, I will come back and dedicate it to Master. The real Minghua sat on the lotus pedestal and remained silent for a long time. Finally, he waved his hand casually, expressing his acquiescence. On King Gluo Peak, Ling Yunpo and An Zisu studied the ancient books left by Master Su Jian for a long time, but they still couldn't find out the origin of the pure black flying sword. There is only one ancient book that mentions the Qingping sword. Judging from its shape description, it seems to be quite similar to this flying sword. However, the Qingping sword was smashed by someone using the 7 treasures tree at the end of the ancient battle of interpretation. In other words, this flying sword may have been recast after the Qingping sword was broken, or it was cast after imitating the Qingping sword, and the specific attributes and characteristics cannot be checked. For now, the only way to do this is to wait until Ling Yunpo has entered the marrow cleansing stage, raise the sword with his body, practice it as his life sword, and then use his spiritual sense to confirm it from the inside. Back to the topic, Now that there is a flying sword, Nzisua began to teach him the Shushan swordsmanship. Yu reading www.yuuganchu.com. Ling Yunpo discovered that Kunlun swordsmanship and Shushan swordsmanship were like the Qi Zong and Sword Zong of the Huashan school. Kunlun swordsmanship follows the open and dignified route. The reason is that the Kunlun school advocates Qi refining, and believes that the key to swordsmanship is the realm of cultivation. As long as your cultivation base crushes your opponent, it means breaking 10 guilds with one force. On the contrary, the general style of Shushan Yujianchu's style is all-encompassing, extremely changing, and pays attention to defeating the strong by the weak. On the basis of the general outline, each peak has developed its own style of swordsmanship. On King Glaveng's side, it is the Taoist tradition of Sujian, the master of the 7 kills, and the Shushan 7 kills swordsmanship. 7 kill swordsmanship, the first is to attack the body. Nzisua squeezed a sword formula, pulled out his own frostfall flying sword, and recited the formula of the heart method, and said, having control means partial officials, without control is 7 killings, the 2 yin are opposed to each other, and they are separated by 7, and they fight each other to defeat each other. If there is killing, we should kill first, but if there is no killing, we should use it. Ling Yun couldn't help nodding his head, saying that he didn't understand at all. Nzisua smiled and explained, 7 kill swordsmanship, the key is to defeat the enemy first, suppress the enemy, and absolutely cannot be suppressed by the opponent. The style of swordsmanship is like meeting a narrow road. When you draw a sword, you will see blood immediately, and you won't give the enemy any chance to breathe. The idea of swordsmanship also focuses on offense. Those who can kill by force will never be restrained, those who can be restrained will never be defended. Ling Yunpo, the co-author, senior sister, is so murderous that she would have to cut off people's hands and feet, pierce her chest and belly, all because she practiced the swordsmanship of the 7 kills. From this point of view, my chief master who has closed the door, the peak master of King Gluo Peak who created the 7 kill swordsmanship, and the 7 kill real person Sujian, I am afraid that it is not a good partner. Following senior sister An's continued study, Ling Yunpo realized that the 7 killing swordsmanship was too ferocious. The tricks are all offense, and there is no defense at all. Take the starter style Kang Song welcoming guests as an example. In the general outline of Shushan Yujianchu, it is mentioned that Kang Song welcomes guests is to let Fijian attack the opponent in an arc, and the sword body and the sword path are staggered by about 1/6 of the Pythagorean angle, that is, 15 degrees. The purpose is to flexibility to respond to various situations. If the opponent chooses to defend, Fijian can turn the angle at any time and launch a probing attack. If the opponent also attacks, Fijian can take advantage of the situation to turn the sword sideways and resist the opponent's Fijian. The ability to attack and defend, to advance and retreat, is the essence of this move. When it came to 7 killing swordsmanship, it was changed by Sujian with a big stroke of his pen, and it was changed to the sword path coincides, that is, the tip of the sword and the path of the sword completely overlap. If the opponent is defending, use the flying sword to walk away, change direction quickly, until it breaks through the entanglement of the opponent's flying sword, and directly assassinates the sword fairy on the opposite side. If the opponent attacks, use all your strength to mobilize the flying sword, rush forward at full speed, and kill the sword fairy on the opposite side before the opponent's flying sword touches you. Ling Yunpo can even imagine how Sujian thought about this move when he created the 7 kills sword art. What? A tentative attack? Wouldn't it be better to kill the opponent directly, but also tentatively? Senior sister. After hesitating for a long time, he still asked, this pine welcomes guests, don't you need to consider defense? It's called taking the lead. Nzisua explained with a smile, when the two sides are facing swords, you should urge Fijian to attack with all your strength from the very beginning. Under the shock of the opponent, 6 out of 10 will choose to defend. As long as he defends, you can press him to fight. Most of the sword moves in the 7 kills sword art teach you how to break through the opposing defense. So breaking through defenses is the strength of our 7 kills swordsmanship. Then what if the opponent doesn't defend? Ling Yunpo asked again. If the opponent doesn't defend and counterattack, you will attack him. And Zisu was still smiling. The vast majority of these people don't dare to fight with you, Heathen. Halfway through the attack, they will turn their swords around and come back to defend. So it's back to the first situation. Then what if the opponent is still attacking? Ling Yunpo finally confirmed. That's faster than anyone else's sword speed. And Zisu said calmly, Master once said that in the world of swordsmanship, only speed cannot be broken. So the luck of the 7 kills swordsmanship has achieved the ultimate in urging the flying sword to speed up. Regardless of the realm of cultivation and the rank of flying swords, it only depends on the line of swordsmanship. Our 7 killing swordsmanship at King Guo Peak is the fastest among Shushan swordsmanship. Ling Yunpo thought for a while, then said with a smile, that is to say, the opponent can't rush the attack and can't get it, and the defense will fall into our advantageous range. Isn't this 7 kill swordsmanship invincible? Silly junior brother. And Zisu shook his head. Our swordsmanship in King Guo Peak is known for its speed, and everyone in Shushan knows it. So when you fight against them, they will never attack you, they are all post strikes. 7 kills swordsmanship must suppress the attack. As long as you suppress the opposing swordsmanship, it is 7 kills. Often, you can end the battle neatly in a few breaths. But what if you can't suppress it? Once your swordsmanship is not as good as the opponent's, when your aura is exhausted and your swordsmanship is old, it's time for the opponent to counterattack. So the second sentence of the formula is 7 kills without control, and the point is that it must not be suppressed by the opponent. These 7 kill swordsmanship, one answer to the sword move, I'll do it for you first, you can watch it carefully. And Zisu made sword fingers with both hands and pointed forward, and the Frost Falls sword broke through the air and pierced into the opposite rock wall, like cutting tofu, and the stone chips fell rustling. This is Kangsong's welcome. She turned her sword fingers again, and the Frost Fall sword swirled along with it, and used other moves one by one. This is for the mind to turn at will. This is the white rainbow shining through the Sunday. This is drinking alone under the moon. Ling Yunpo looked at him speechlessly, and saw that senior sister An was dressed elegantly, like a colorful butterfly. The sword light danced, and it was splendid. Huo Ruyi shoots 9 sunsets, like a group of emperors and dragons flying. Come like a thunderbolt to collect anger, stop like a river condensing light. He was fascinated and intoxicated, and he didn't know whether he was looking at the splendid brilliance of the fairy sword or the heroic and beautiful figure of senior sister. And Zisu's sword dance started to flourish, so he simply sang in a clear voice, Fig Wang, listen to me. Take the blood from my heart, the proud bones in my chest, and cast a 3-foot flying sword. The sound is like the roar of a dragon, and the light is purple electricity. The slaughter of the 4 wilds, the chi is soaring for 9 days. The soul is filled with blue, and the blood is filled with yellow springs. The immortals and demons offer their heads, and the gods and Buddhas return to the burial. I heard about the Eastern Emperor Demon Realm, but I don't know how far it is. But where is Su Ming? Is it really safe to see you? I will enter with a sword and cut through the moat. Meng Zhang's guards cannot survive, and Ling Guang's rule is inevitable. After she sang the song slowly, the sword light just returned to its sheath. Ling Yunpo gave a high five and praised, good singing. Senior sister, this song has a heroic spirit, which really breaks my brother's heart. And Zisu blushed pretty and said, I didn't do it. It was master who used chopsticks to hit the cup after drinking. I just thought it sounded good, so I memorized the lyrics. The words are good, the song is good, and the senior sister can sing even better. Ling Yunpo laughed. And Zisu became more and more shy, so he forcibly put on the air of senior sister and interrupted him, I won't talk to you anymore. Did you see the sword move I demonstrated just now? Oops. Ling Yunpo said embarrassedly, I was looking at senior sister, but I forgot to look at Fijian, but it was my fault. I'll make it for you again. And Ziso gave him a helpless look, and then he used the Frostfall sword again. Ling Yunpo practiced here for a few days. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com. Chu Chongtian was not harassed by his junior sister, and he had a quiet time. As a result, the synchronization rate set by no enemy dropped all the way to 82%, and it was about to fall below the 80th level. There was no other way, I had to find someone to pretend. With the help of the Kunlun mirror, load the image template of Autumn Chongtian, and then read the file to go to Kunlun Jinling in the early morning. Chu Chongtian came out of the cave and went to find his junior sister Su Yinglian. Su Yinglian's cave dwelling is located a little below the south side of the Jinling Peak. There is an open space at the entrance, and there are often many cranes walking around, waiting for Su Yinglian to feed them. After walking along the path for dozens of steps, they arrived at the entrance of the junior sister's cave. I saw Su Yinglian dressed in white, standing pretty in the open space in front of the mansion, practicing swordsmanship, holding the sword manual of Kunlun Yujianju in his left hand, and his right hand is a sword pointing to luck. The scarlet Yujia sword slashed in the air, leaving a trail. A fiery trajectory arc. Junior sister. Chu Chongtian greeted her with a smile. Senior brother. Su Yinglian saluted lightly and forced a smile, but there was a lingering sullen look between her brows and eyes. Chu Chongtian could see that her obsession seemed to be a little more serious. According to what Headmaster Ziwei said, if it goes on like this, maybe it will turn into a demon. No. Although I often need to use my sister to refresh the sync value in order to maintain the no enemy setting. But I can't hurt my sister because of this. It seemed that she had to find a way to encourage her and cheer her up. So Chu Chongtian put away his smile, watched her concentrate on practicing the sword for a few minutes, and suddenly said in an inconceivable tone in astonishment, "No way, junior sister? You've practiced for so many days, that's all." The fire of Su Yinglian rushed to the forehead directly along the blood. "Brother, what can you teach me?" She almost squeezed out her voice word by word from between her teeth. Chu Chongtian did not answer her, but heard Kunlun Jing say, "With no enemies, the synchronization rate has increased, currently at 82%. With certainty in his heart, he slowly said in a serious tone, "In a few days, it will be the day when Kunlun Taking Sect was founded. The immortal seekers who can complete the road to the sky at that time will become the 280th generation disciple of Kunlun. You and I were put into the gate wall by Kunlun early because of our talent for Taoism. If you don't have the ability to suppress other disciples, how will you convince them in the future?" Su Yinglian opened her eyes wide and said in a bad tone, "Do you think that I can't force other brothers and sisters to be a good second sister?" "I didn't say that." Chu Chongtian smiled again, "Just watching your swordsmanship, there are many flaws, and I was a little worried for a while." "Weakness?" Su Yinglian's pupil shrank, and she asked in a cold voice, "I am practicing the orthodox Kunlun swordsmanship, what are the flaws?" Even if they all practice Kunlun's orthodox swordsmanship, there will be differences due to different personal perceptions. Chu Chongtian said with a smile, "Let's have Kang Song welcome to see." Su Yinglian didn't answer, but just pinched the sword, and the Yujia sword suddenly rose, drew a sharp arc, and attacked Chu Chongtian directly. Today's three major orthodox religions, Kunlun, Shushan, and Penglai, all originated from ancient chanting sects 10,000 years ago, so their general outline of sword fighting is also inherited from the ancient chanting's basic swordsmanship. The starting style in the Kunlun Swordsmanship General Guide is also the Pine welcomes guests, and it is no different from the general guideline of Shushan Yujianshu. It's just that Ling Yunpo and senior sister An have been practicing the swordsmanship of Shushan 7 kills for many days. From the perspective of high-level construction, and looking at the basic swordsmanship of the teaching, it can be seen that a lot of cuts and simplifications have been made in order to allow beginners to adapt as soon as possible. Just like the Shaolin Chongquan in martial arts, it is enough to lay the foundation, but not so good in actual combat. Su Yinglian used the standard Kengpine to welcome guests and attack. Chu Chongtian could see 5 or 6 flaws with just one glance. The jade smoke sword shot out, and the last one came first. Su Yinglian wanted to control Yu Jia's sword to block, but the angle of her brother's flying sword was completely beyond her expectations, and Yu Jia was directly knocked into the air by Yu Yan. Here, and here. Chu Chongtian pulled back the jade smoke, then imitated Su Yinglian just now and took a sword move, and pointed out several flaws in swordsmanship, which made Su Yinglian stunned. Why didn't I find out before? Well, what my brother said is indeed true. But this is the general outline of Kunlun's swordsmanship. Su Yinglian frowned after he finished speaking in detail. According to you, is it possible that this general outline of swordsmanship already had so many loopholes when it was originally designed? Defects? After so many years, has no one improved it? Of course there are improvements. Chu Chongtian smiled slightly. For example, the first flaw I mentioned, if it is targeted by the enemy, you only need to make a small change here. He used both the cracking and anti-cracking sword moves, and when he looked at Su Yinglian again, this junior sister already showed a sudden realization. So, it is better to have no books than to believe in books. Chu Chongtian concluded in the end, although the general outline of imperial swordsmanship is written like this, if you follow the script, you will be inferior, and you must have your own understanding and changes. It turns out that I have been taught. Su Yinglian came back to his senses and thanked him sincerely. Different from Nzisu's softness with firmness, Su Yinglian is firm on the outside and soft on the inside. She usually has a cold appearance of refusing people thousands of miles away, but after all, she was born in the Tianese Su family, an aristocratic cultivator, and her words and deeds still have the softness and charm of a classical lady cultivated since childhood. At this time, she just bowed her body slightly to thank him. The graceful curves of the robe and the fair neck in the front of the robe made Chu Chongtian feel a little bit moved. You're welcome. Chu Chongtian pressed the charming emotions in his heart, turned his hands behind his back, and said lightly, I'm your senior brother, so naturally I want to help you in your practice, so as not to be laughed at by others. With no enemies, the synchronization rate has increased, currently at 87%. Hey? Thoughtful autumn days. It turns out that there is still such a way to pretend, and it actually gave me a 5% synchronization rate in one go. Su Yinglian didn't speak, only to hear Chu Chongtian say again, do you have any questions? Please ask them one by one. You are my younger sister Chu Chongtian, I will not allow you to lose face in front of other disciples. Su Yinglian. Anger erupted in her eyes, but she said with a sneer, Senior brother is so loud, can you really answer any question? That's natural. Chu Chongtian said lightly, otherwise, how can I be your senior brother? Su Yinglian. Hearing this sentence, her fighting spirit suddenly ignited. In other words, if Chu Chongtian can't answer a question about kendo, then it proves that he is not worthy of being my senior brother? Prove that he lost. He, ha 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 ha, senior brother will definitely lose to me this time. Okay. Su Yinglian lowered his eyes to prevent his senior brother from discovering the fighting intent in his eyes. That junior sister does have a few questions, so I need to ask my senior brother for advice. On her side, she practiced swordsmanship on weekdays, and she had accumulated a lot of questions, which she asked all at once. It has to be mentioned here that the records of Shushan swordsmanship are much more detailed than Kunlun swordsmanship. Probably because there are many ambiguous descriptions in the general outline of the latter. Even if the practitioner reads it through several times, he does not know what it is written. Su Yinglian's questions were mostly vague in Kunlun swordsmanship, but they were all answered in Shushan swordsmanship. So Chu Chongtian answered without hesitation, "What's so difficult about this?" He divided Su Yinglian's question into several key answers, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. When Su Yinglian heard it, it was like a slap in the face, and the feeling suddenly opened up. All the worries that troubled the practice in the past were all solved at this time. But she was not happy. "Let's not mention swordsmanship first, I still have some questions to ask my teacher about Jushin King Gui entry mantra." Su Yinglian tried to calm down and continued to embarrass senior brother. Here, Kunlun Jing has already read in his mind, with no enemies, the synchronization rate has increased, currently at 89%. What's so difficult about this? Chu Chongtian cried out inwardly, and said again, "Listen to me." Every time he said a point, Su Yinglian's face turned pale, and when it came to the back, her face was as white as golden paper, and her figure was shaky. Could it be that my brother and I's understanding of qi refining is really that much different? Impossible. This is impossible. This is impossible. Guan. Regarding the derivative method of the first layer of qi refining technique, the universal voiceless little brightness technique, junior sister still has a few questions to ask. Su Yinglian was in a state of turmoil, her emotions were fluctuating, and there was even a hint of pleading in her tone that she was unaware of. "If senior brother can't answer, it's fine, I will ask other seniors for help." "What senior do you want to ask?" Chu Chongtian said impatiently, "This question couldn't be simpler, I'll tell you." After he finished talking in detail here, Su Yinglian finally collapsed, turned around and left, saying, "Senior brother said it very well. Sister has something to do, so don't bother senior brother." She held back her tears, stepped on Yujia's sword, and flew away suddenly. With no enemies, the synchronization rate has increased, currently at 91%. Chu Chongtian watched Su Yinglian go away, and couldn't help but smile. This junior sister is really cute. The Kunlun Mountain opening day, which takes place every 30 years, has finally arrived. The so-called 30 is half a jiazi. The Kunlun taking sect established the number of Chinki as gold in the sea, so it usually officially opened the mountain in the Jiazi year or the Yuko year, and made it again in the Jiao year or the Yaiwei year, that is, twice a year. It's too much space to go into detail about this stuff, so I won't mention it for the time being. But for the ancients with an average lifespan of less than 50, it means that most people have only 1 or 2 opportunities to worship Kunlun in their lifetime. Of course, if the talent is as strong as Chu Chongtian, who can complete the Kunlun mountain climbing road before the opening of the mountain, then it will be no problem to join the taking sect at any time. Chu Chongtian and Su Yinglian rode their swords down and circled around the Kunlun Tianzu. I saw the steps of the Kunlun climbing sky road, going up around the Kunlun Tianzu, circle after circle, countless mortals clinging to it like ants, climbing up with difficulty. I heard that senior brother climbed the mountain on a day other than the day it was opened. Su Yinglian squinted him with a cold expression. Not bad. Chu Chongtian nodded. Can you tell my junior sister, what's so mysterious about this road to the sky? Su Yinglian pointed to the bottom and said. Su Yinglian was cultivated by the Su family in Tianese because of her talent for cultivating Taoism with 7 orifices and exquisite hearts, and was brought into Kunlun by senior brother Su Chongqing in the foundation building period to be his teacher, and he never went to heaven. In future generations, for example, the college is exempted from the test and recommends students, asking you what does the college entrance examination feel like, which is essentially a show. Chu Chongtian didn't realize it, he just replied with a smile, this Kunlun climbs the road to the sky is 100,000 steps. It's not a virtual finger, but a real 100,000 steps. If mortals can complete the journey to the sky in 1 day and 1 night, they will be allowed to join the Kunlun taking sect. According to the order in which they have completed the road to the sky, they can be divided into inner disciples and outer disciples. Inner disciples can participate in the apprenticeship meeting and worship teachers, while outer disciples can only learn Qi refinement by themselves. Furthermore, if you want to practice the 9 heavens clearly entering mantra, which is the highest in this sect, you must be under the sect of Headmaster Zaiwei. Our master only accepts 7 disciples per generation, and only the chief disciple is a personal disciple who can enter the Yuexu Palace lecture room to listen to the scriptures, and the rest of the disciples can only follow the chief to study. Hey! Su Yinglian interrupted him, since the chief disciple of this generation has already decided to be a senior brother in advance, why can I also go to the lecture room to listen to the scriptures? Because junior sister's 7 orifices are exquisite, and she is one of the world's best talents for Taoism. Chu Chongtian said with a smile, genius can always make people break the routine. Genius can always make people break the routine. Su Yinglian chewed on these words carefully, and suddenly saw his brother press down the sword light, so he quickly followed. On the mountain road below, there was a mortal boy sitting on the steps, covering his face with his hands and not saying a word. His companion was pulling his sleeves and persuaded, "Don't rest, come with me." The young man just shook his head, but he refused to get up. "The mountain road is endless, it's really tiring. Allow me to rest for a while." The 2 swords spun down, and Chu Chongtian said coldly, "He was bewitched by the devil from the outside world, and he has grown tired and decadent. You can go on your own and leave him alone." The boy's face changed after hearing this, but after all, his will was not strong, and he really didn't want to leave, so he lowered his head and said nothing. His companion gritted his teeth and had to leave him behind and move on. Chu Chongtian raised the sword light again and said to Su Yinglian, "It is not easy to walk this way to the sky. The higher the mountain, the closer to the sky, the mortal flesh has no immortal protection, and if you are tired of stopping, you will be magnified by the devil outside the sky. The desire to seek the way is not firm. If you stop and rest, it will be difficult to get up again." "The devil from outside the sky?" Su Yinglian asked incredulously. "In the territory of our Kunlun taking sect, is it still affected by the devil from outside the sky? Cultivation has 3 disasters and 9 calamities, and you can't escape it anywhere." Chu Chongtian shook his head and said, "To achieve the road to immortality with the body of a mortal, you must have great perseverance and great aspirations." The 2 swordsmen continued to soar upwards, seeing that the higher the mountain road, the fewer pedestrians and the more people stopped. If it is true as Chu Chongtian said, on this road to the sky, as long as you stop and rest, you will let go of the obsession of cultivating the Tao. It's really hard to think about walking. Seeing that Su Yinglian was eager to try, it seemed that he wanted to land and compete with these immortal seekers on the way to the sky. Chu Chongtian said with a smile, "Junior sister's 7 orifices are exquisite, and she has a strong resistance to the devil. Even if you are confused by magic, you can see through it quickly. That's why the master allows you to get started without testing. It's really not difficult." "So that's the case." After hearing what the senior brother said, Su Yinglian also let go of his competitive spirit and sighed, "Then what about the senior brother's transparent mind?" Chu Chongtian smiled without saying a word. "Your 7 orifices and exquisite heart are only resistant to the invasion of inner demons. My mind is clear, but I am directly immune to the invasion of demons. Which is better and which is worse, do I need to say more? But if this is said, although it can greatly increase the synchronization value, junior sister Ajiao will definitely turn his back on him." Therefore, Chu Chongtian just changed the subject, pointed to the bottom and said, "Speaking of this, among the disciples of this year's mountaineering, there are also a few talented people. The person who is currently in the first place, called Guanzhan, is said to be from the Longjiguan family." Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com Longjiguan family. Su Yinglian frowned and said, "Isn't his family a swordsman from generation to generation? They all come from Shushan Shangqing school? Why did you send a young man to Kunlun this time?" "I don't know about this either." Chu Chongtian shook his head. However, this hurdle is extremely strong. After opening the mountain, he walked all the way, leaving everyone else behind. Now the pace is slowing down, and I can't hold it anymore. But the first position is still difficult to shake. As usual, he is the chief disciple of this generation. Su Yinglian said with a sneer, his tone slightly mocking, "It's a pity that I met my senior brother this time." "Just met me?" Chu Chongtian laughed dumbly. "Junior sister, don't forget, according to the entry order, you are also in front of him. If he chooses to worship the head teacher as his teacher, he can only be ranked third at most." Yet, Su Yinglian nodded, thinking that there was a junior brother under her. Her mood improved a little. The person walking in second is Yan Hetui from the Beiludong Academy in Zhangzhou. Chu Chongtian pointed to a person behind and continued to say to his younger sister, "The three major sects of ancient times are the interpretation of teaching, interception of teaching and people teaching. Among them, people's teaching has been passed down to this day, and it is Confucianism that has inherited the mantle of it. This Yanzi came from the Yan family in Lanzhou, Qingzhou, and the family has a scholarly family for generations. As a result, this generation's descendants did not go to the imperial examination to become an official, but traveled thousands of miles to Kunlun to be apprentices. It is also strange." Su Yinglian pondered for a moment and said, "Brother, what do you want to explain? Kunlun's luck is so prosperous that it attracts children from aristocratic families to vote." "No." Seeing such a cute junior sister, Chu Chongtian couldn't help teasing her. "This generation of disciples is born in large numbers, and junior sisters must practice diligently, and don't be surpassed by junior brothers and sisters. This is absolutely impossible." Su Yinglian was immediately furious and said through gritted teeth. The next day, Chu Chongtian continued to take junior sister Su, and the two of them flew around the Tianzi with their sword lights, chatting and laughing, feeling very comfortable. Let's talk about the barriers on the Kunlun climbing road below. Running wildly on the mountain road for a day and a night, and the strength is exhausted. On the day when the mountain was opened, before climbing the mountain, Kunlun issued a mountaineering token to everyone, with its own immediate effect. However, even if you don't need to eat, drink and excrete, you will inevitably suffer physical and mental torment during the long mountaineering process. When he was in his early 90s, he saw Yan's Hetui behind him. Catch up slowly. Guanzhong was terrified in his heart, and he just tried to speed up again. Running and stopping like this is, after all, more difficult than walking at a normal speed. After reaching the last dozen or so steps of the 100,000 step, Guanzhong finally lost his strength, accidentally fell on the stone steps, and was still crawling upwards abruptly. Yan's Hetui saw it from behind, but he didn't take the opportunity to chase. Although his face was not tired, he was a mortal body after all, and his limbs were already swaying like lead. It's just that he was taught the etiquette of a gentleman since he was a child, and no matter how tired he is, he can't lose his temper, so he forced his face. At the end, Guanzhong finally climbed to the end, only 3 steps ahead of Yan's Hetui. He was prone on the ground, his chest heaving slightly, and he didn't even have the strength to turn over. Yan's Hetui calmly raised his feet, crossed his body, and sat down on the rock beside him to rest. After a while, a red sword light flew over. Su Yinglian pressed down the sword light, glanced at Guanzhong who was lying on the ground, then looked at Yan's Hetui who was sitting on the rock, and said coldly, "The two of you have finished your journey to the sky, so you can rest here for a while. Later, there will be disciples who will be invited to attend the entrance ceremony." Guanzhong raised his head and said weakly, "You go, I have to rest for a while." "You have to go?" Su Yinglian said with a frown. "After the entrance ceremony, there is the apprenticeship conference. You need to choose the Kunlun elders who are willing to accept apprentices in the order in which you have completed the mountaineering." Guanzhong shook his head and said, "I am the number 1 this time." According to the rules of the sect, I should be the chief disciple of this generation, and the sect master will personally pass it on. What else do you choose? Su Yinglian sneered. The chief disciple of the 280th generation is senior brother Chu Chongtian Chu, who has nothing to do with you. What? That Guanzhang cried out, even his voice became sharp, but I am obviously the number one this time. Who is Chu Chongtian? Senior brother has already walked the way to the sky on the no penning day, so he was appointed as the chief disciple of this generation by the head. Su Yinglian said coldly, if you don't agree, you can also climb the mountain on the no penning day. Go back to the mountain. Guanzhang fell on the ground incompetently and furiously, scolding something in his mouth. On the contrary, Yan's Hetui was thoughtful and asked, Sister, I remember that the Kunlun road to heaven was not the day when the mountain was opened. From the 85,000th step up, there was a calamity wind blowing from the sky. The blade is as sharp as a cone, even mixed with the sound of the devil's soul-eating soul. That senior brother Chu was only a mortal body at that time, right? Even if he had a mountaineering token in his body, he didn't know how to drive it. If he had the slightest desire to enter the devil, the calamity would penetrate through the gate of heaven, streak into the joints of the bones, and reach the spring. The whole body turned into feather silk, and it disappeared with the wind. You're right. Su Yinglian turned her eyes and nodded indifferently. However, senior brother Chu has the unparalleled talent of transparent Taoism, so what's so strange that he can walk the road to the sky on a non-historic day? The mind of the Tao is clear. Guanzhang was immediately sluggish when he heard the words, and Yan's Hetui also sucked in a breath of cold air, obviously knowing the weight of these 4 words. That is a peerless cultivation talent. According to ancient records, it is difficult to find a single case in 10,000 years. Seeing that the two of them could not speak at the same time, Su Yinglian felt a sense of darkness in his heart for no reason. In the past, she was recklessly oppressed by her senior brother with his peerless talent. She felt so aggrieved. At this time, she was so happy to use her senior brother's name to deter these newcomers. Soon, the road to the sky was closed again. Those who failed to reach the top of Tianzu before the end were sent out of Kunlun by the Mountain Protection Formation. So far, a total of 323 people have successfully completed the road to the sky, of which 107 became inner disciples, and 216 became outer disciples. Except for Chu Chongtian and Su Yinglian, the 7 disciples of Ziwei's head teacher were selected by the top 5 disciples who successfully climbed the mountain this time. It can be seen how attractive the 9 heavens clearly entry mantra is. Chu Chongtian also participated in the apprenticeship meeting, and I saw the 5 disciples who chose to apprentice with Kunlun this time. They are, Lanjua Guan family, Guanzhan. Beiludong Academy, by Yan's Hetui. The Chen family in Guangling, Chen Zhen. Nanyang Zhong family, Zhong Tian Huai. Qingzhou Jian family, Jian Qingnan. Among them, the Lonjuguan family has been a sword immortal for generations. Beiludong Academy is a holy place of Confucianism. Both the Chen family in Guangling and the Zhong family in Nanyang have a small local cultivation sect with many disciples. The Jian family in Qingzhou is an aristocratic family of arithmetic, and the contemporary head of the family, Jian Bian, is a master of fortune-telling. From this point of view, these 5 junior brothers and sisters are actually the 2nd generation of immortals. Chu Chongtian sighed, thinking secretly in his heart. The phenomenon of inner disciples being occupied by aristocratic cultivators can be traced back to the source of the dispute over interpretation. In ancient times, interpreting teachings emphasized teaching according to aptitude. UU reading www.uuganju.com. The so-called interpretation means to clarify and inspire according to qualifications. The result of this is that the sect accepts disciples and places too much emphasis on the qualifications of Taoism. Without qualifications, one cannot cultivate immortals. Now that the teaching has been divided into 3 parts, the following sect customs are still maintained. The Kunlun taking school examines the nature of mind, the Shangqing school in Shushan pays attention to the root and bones, and the Penglai Yuking view only looks at the understanding. As for the aptitude for cultivation, how can the children of ordinary people who have nothing compared to the children of the immortal family who have been fed with heaven and earth treasures since childhood, and who have been trained by famous teachers? The result is that the ascending channel is completely controlled by the children of the aristocratic family. In the ancient times, sects were cut off, emphasizing that there is no distinction between those who teach and those who teach, and that people can cultivate immortals regardless of their aptitudes, which can be regarded as bringing hope to the children of the commoners. As a result, the disciples of the disciples were mixed, and even in order to circumvent the lack of aptitude, they invented all kinds of sideways, such as the sacrifice flow, the blood food flow, the harvest and supplement flow, etc., which led to a bad reputation. Leaving aside the historical background, now there are 4 more junior brothers and 1 junior sister, and they are all from the 2nd generation of immortals. It is estimated that they are all people with high spirits. You have to think of a way to pretend to be strong. No, it's to educate them well and train them to be well-behaved and sensible juniors like junior sister Su. Thinking of this, Chu Chongtian couldn't help but tilt his head to look at Su Yinglian beside him. Sister Su is really cute. No, tease again. Why are you looking at me? Su Yinglian was inexplicable. You are now the chief disciple of this generation. You must be dignified in your words and deeds, and don't look around. Junior sister is willing to recognize me as the chief. Chu Chongtian asked in surprise. Not reconciled? Su Yinglian said angrily, sooner or later, I will defeat you and take the position of chief disciple. Just wait.